On February 19, 1945, 8 square miles of barren volcanic rock became the deadliest battleground in Marine Corps history. Admiral Nimitz called Iwo Jima essential, a tiny island sitting halfway between Tokyo and the Marianas, exactly where Japan's early warning radar shield could spot every American raid. The official story remembers the iconic flag raising, but beneath that moment was a war of tunnels, concrete, and fire. Over 100,000 Marines versus 21,000 defenders sworn to fight to the death. Why would so much hinge on so little land? And what did it truly cost to win Iwo Jima? The answer lies in the map, the plan, and the trap waiting for the first wave to land. Iwo Jima's value began with a simple calculation: distance. The island sits almost exactly 650 miles south of Tokyo, and the same distance north of the American airfields at Saipan and Tinian. For the B-29 superfortress, that stretch of ocean was both a lifeline and a hazard. Every bombing run to Japan meant crossing nearly 1,500 miles of open water, with no safe harbor in between. For crews, a single engine failure or a flak-damaged fuel tank could turn a routine mission into a race against exhaustion and the Pacific itself. On paper, Iwo Jima is just 8 square miles of volcanic rock, but its location cut right across the path of every American bomber heading to Tokyo. Japanese radar crews on the island could spot inbound B-29s and alert the mainland 2 hours before the first bombs fell. That advance warning gave Japanese fighters time to scramble and anti-aircraft batteries time to prepare. For American planners, this meant every mission risked interception, and every damaged plane faced a long, uncertain flight home. The math was unforgiving. In late 1944, B-29s flying from the Marianas lost dozens of crews to mechanical failures, combat damage, and fuel shortages. Between November and January, Japanese fighters based on Iwo Jima destroyed 11 B-29s and damaged over 40 more as they passed overhead or limped home. For each bomber forced to ditch, the odds of rescue were slim. The Pacific was vast, and even with new air-sea rescue squadrons, many crews vanished without a trace. American strategists saw Iwo Jima as more than a dot on the map. Capturing it would erase the early warning line, silence the radar that gave Tokyo precious minutes to react, and deny Japanese fighters their last forward base. Its airfields could serve as emergency landing strips for crippled bombers, potentially saving thousands of airmen, and as a launch point for long-range P-51 escorts, finally giving B-29s a fighting chance all the way to Japan and back. The island's position, halfway between the Marianas and Tokyo, turned it from a barren outpost into the fulcrum of the air war. For Admiral Nimitz and his staff, the logic was inescapable. Leave Iwo Jima in Japanese hands, and every bombing mission risked disaster. Take it, and the path to Japan would be shorter, safer, and deadlier for the enemy. Geography made the decision. 8 square miles, halfway to Tokyo, would decide the fate of thousands of men in the air above the Pacific. 100,000 Marines, sailors, and support troops, drawn from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions, gathered for the assault on Iwo Jima. Operation Detachment called for a force unmatched in scale for a single island. 3 full Marine divisions, each battle-hardened, each carrying scars from Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and Bougainville. Major General Harry Schmidt, commanding the 5th Amphibious Corps, was tasked with orchestrating this complex operation. The invasion fleet itself stretched horizon to horizon, over 700 ships in total, including battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and 15 escort carriers. Every vessel had a specific role: floating hospitals, ammunition ships, LSTs packed with tanks and flamethrower vehicles, and wave after wave of landing craft. On paper, the American force dwarfed the defenders. The planners expected a week to 10 days of fighting, with overwhelming numbers and firepower meant to crush resistance quickly. The Japanese garrison, under Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, numbered just over 21,000, roughly one defender for every 5 attackers. But while American commanders counted men and ships, Kuribayashi counted fields of fire, pillboxes, and miles of tunnel. He had transformed Iwo Jima into a fortress, betting that even the mightiest invasion force could be bled white, if forced to fight, for every yard. The logistical effort behind the operation was staggering. Each Marine division landed with its own tanks, artillery, engineers, and supply trains. Specialized units brought amphibious tractors, bulldozers, and demolition teams, tools designed to overcome any obstacle the island could present. The Navy's bombardment group, led by Admiral Blandy, included 8 battleships and 5 heavy cruisers, each assigned pre-sighted targets on the volcanic slopes. Carrier-based aircraft would fly hundreds of sorties a day, providing close air support and reconnaissance. Schmidt's plan was direct. Land the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions abreast on the southeastern beaches, seize the airfields, and drive north to cut the island in half. The 3rd Marine Division would remain in floating reserve, ready to exploit success or plug any gap. The hope was that firepower and numbers would carry the day, but the island's volcanic sands and the unseen defenses beneath would test every assumption. For the men aboard those ships, the scale of the operation was visible in every direction. Columns of landing craft circling under the guns of the fleet, the distant outline of Iwo Jima's black slopes, and the knowledge that for all the power assembled, the defenders waited in silence, hidden and ready. The weight of numbers promised a quick victory. The reality, as the first landing craft approached the beaches, would prove far more costly. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944, carrying with him a vision that would transform the island into one of the most formidable defensive fortresses of the war. Rather than relying on traditional beach defenses, he ordered his engineers to disappear beneath the surface, carving out a labyrinth that would defy both bombs and bullets. Over 8 months, Japanese troops and laborers excavated more than 18 kilometers of interconnected tunnels, linking 800 reinforced concrete pillboxes, blockhouses, and artillery positions. The volcanic rock, soft enough for picks but strong enough for fortification, allowed construction teams to dig chambers large enough to hold hundreds of men. Ventilation shafts, hidden entrances, and multiple exits turned each strongpoint into a puzzle for attackers and a lifeline for defenders. Kuribayashi's command post sat 20 meters underground, its chambers shielded by meters of earth and concrete. Communications tunnels stretched north to south, connecting the heights of Mount Suribachi to the far northern cliffs. Some installations, like the one inside Suribachi itself, descended 7 stories below ground. Each major defensive position featured multiple entrances to prevent entrapment and to enable rapid reinforcement or withdrawal. The island's natural ridges and ravines became the backbone for 2 interlocking defensive belts, each designed to channel attackers into overlapping kill zones covered by pre-sighted artillery, mortars, and machine guns. Concrete was mixed on site, using volcanic sand to create bunkers that could shrug off direct hits from 16-inch naval shells. Gun positions were often set on the reverse slopes, invisible from the sea, their firing ports camouflaged until the moment they opened fire. Artillery crews operated behind steel sliding doors, swinging them open just long enough to fire before sealing themselves in again. Every field of fire was mapped and rehearsed, with forward observers perched on Suribachi, able to call down barrages anywhere on the southern beaches or airfields. These fortifications were more than static obstacles. They were part of a living, adaptive defense. When a pillbox was cleared by flamethrowers or explosives, defenders could slip away through hidden passages, only to reappear in another sector or retake a supposedly secured position. The tunnel network allowed Kuribayashi to shift reserves unseen, resupply isolated units, and maintain command even as the surface became a wasteland. By the time the American fleet arrived, Iwo Jima was less an island than a weapon, its entire mass converted into a layered, interconnected trap. The 3-day naval bombardment, intended to crush Japanese resistance, barely scratched the surface. Most of the garrison waited underground, emerging only when the beaches were full and the killing could begin. At 9 a.m. on February 19, 1945, the first waves of Marines from the 4th and 5th Divisions hit Iwo Jima's southeastern beaches, expecting resistance, but finding only the thick silence of volcanic ash. The black sand, fine as powder, swallowed boots and shovels alike. Every step forward was a struggle. Men sank to their ankles, LVTs bogged down, and tanks spun their tracks uselessly. The ash terrace, rising nearly 15 feet above the tide line, formed an unyielding wall. Marines tried digging in, only to find the sand collapsed faster than they could scoop it away. Foxholes offered no cover. For hundreds of yards, there was nothing but open ground, and the knowledge that unseen eyes watched from Suribachi and the quarry. Landing craft after landing craft deposited men into this bottleneck. As the number of Marines on the beach swelled, the Japanese garrison waited. Kuribayashi's orders were clear: let the Americans pile up. Let them believe the worst was over. Then at 10 a.m., the first shells slammed in. Pre-sighted mortars and artillery erupted from hidden positions. Rounds walked the length of the beach. Machine gun fire raked the terraces, and the air filled with sand and shrapnel. The beachhead became a killing zone. Within hours, casualty reports climbed past 2,400. Entire platoons were pinned down, unable to advance or retreat. Wounded men lay exposed, medics crawling through the ash under fire. Survival depended on movement, but the terrain offered none. The only hope lay with the engineers. Bulldozer crews, under fire, charged ashore. With blades lowered, they clawed at the terrace, carving out rough ramps so tanks and LVTs could inch forward. Some dozers were hit and burned. Others kept working, pushing paths through the ash while shells burst nearby. Their work allowed armor to move up, providing the first real cover for trapped infantry. These makeshift corridors became lifelines, routes for evacuation, supply, and the next waves of assault. The 4th Division, on the right, found itself funneled into a narrow gap between the quarry and the sea, every step met by crossfire from pillboxes and mortars. The 5th Division, on the left, faced Suribachi's looming shadow, its slopes alive with snipers and artillery spotters. Communication lines tangled and broke down. Units mixed together in the chaos, officers improvising new chains of command on the fly. Every movement forward was paid for in blood. The plan to seize Airfield No. 1 by nightfall was already slipping away. By dusk, the beach was littered with wrecked vehicles, bodies, and the gear of men who would not return. The ash terrace, meant to be a minor obstacle, had become the first test of survival on Iwo Jima. The 28th Marine Regiment reached the base of Mount Suribachi, with the island's volcanic peak looming above them, its slopes riddled with caves and hidden gun ports. For 4 days, the Marines had fought their way west, isolating Suribachi from the rest of Iwo Jima with a cordon of foxholes and sandbagged machine gun nests. Each step forward was met by sniper fire, grenades rolled from above, and the constant threat of counterattacks erupting from unseen tunnels. The mountain's defenders, nearly 1,000 strong at the start, had turned every cave mouth into a fortress. forcing the Marines to clear positions one by one, first with rifle fire, then grenades, then flamethrowers, and finally demolition charges. Ash and sulfur filled the air, coating uniforms and stinging eyes, as the 28th pressed higher up the slope. By the morning of February 23rd, the summit stood within reach. Lieutenant Harold Schreier led a 40-man patrol up the crater's steep incline, moving cautiously past shattered rock and the bodies of Japanese soldiers who had refused to surrender. At 10:20 a.m., the patrol reached the rim. There, Schreier's men unfurled a small American flag, wiring it to a length of Japanese water pipe scavenged from the crater. The sight of the flag fluttering against the gray sky sent a wave of cheers rolling across the island. Ships offshore sounded their horns. On the beaches below, Marines paused in the black sand, some standing, some weeping, all aware of what the moment meant. The flag's appearance triggered a fierce response from the Japanese still holding out in the tunnels below. Grenades and small arms fire erupted from hidden positions, forcing the patrol to fight for every inch as they secured the summit. Realizing the original flag was too small to be seen from the rest of the island, Lieutenant Colonel Chandler Johnson ordered a larger flag to be sent up. Just before 1 p.m., a second patrol reached the top, raising the now iconic banner as Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal captured the image that would become a symbol of the entire Pacific War. The capture of Suribachi marked the first major American foothold on Iwo Jima. For the Marines below, the flag signaled hope in a landscape defined by loss. Yet the fight for the mountain had come at staggering cost. Nearly 1,000 Marines killed or wounded in just 5 days. The volcano's tunnels still concealed pockets of resistance, and the northern two-thirds of the island remained firmly in Japanese hands. But for a brief moment, amid the carnage, the flag atop Suribachi offered proof that the Marines could prevail, even against an enemy determined to fight to the last man. Hill 382 rises from the center of Iwo Jima like a battered monument to attrition, its slopes gouged by weeks of shellfire and the relentless crawl of infantry. For the Marines, this ground is known simply as the meatgrinder, a name earned in days of fighting that yield little more than a few yards of black sand and broken stone. The Japanese have turned the area into a fortress, honeycombed with caves and pillboxes, all linked by tunnels that allow defenders to vanish and reappear at will. Every approach is covered by interlocking fields of fire, with machine guns and mortars pre-sighted on every likely avenue of advance. Marines of the 4th and 5th Divisions face a wall of resistance as soon as they move off the beach. Assault squads cross open ground under a rain of shrapnel, each step forward marked by casualties. The volcanic dust clings to skin and weapons alike, fouling rifle actions and choking lungs. When the wind changes, the air fills with grit and the sharp tang of burning napalm. Progress is measured in feet, not yards, and each nightfall finds men digging shallow scrapes for cover, never knowing when a grenade or a burst of machine gun fire will find them. The heart of the meatgrinder is Hill 382, but the struggle extends outward to Turkey Knob and the amphitheater, each strong point supporting the others with overlapping fire. Japanese gunners, buried deep in concrete bunkers, open steel doors just long enough to fire, then seal themselves away before return fire can reach them. The Marines answer with everything they have: rifle grenades, demolitions, and most of all, flame. Each day, the tank companies bring forward their most feared weapon, the Sherman Zippo. Outfitted with Navy Mark I flamethrowers, these tanks pour streams of napalm into cave mouths and firing slits, the fire crawling deep into the tunnels where defenders wait. By late February, the Zippos are dispensing nearly 10,000 gallons of napalm every day, their operators working at point-blank range under constant threat from suicide squads armed with satchel charges. The cost is staggering. In the first week of fighting around Hill 382, Marine casualties climbed to over 5,000, with some rifle companies reduced to a handful of survivors. The Japanese, following Kuribayashi's orders, refused to give ground. Each position cleared by flamethrower or demolition is often reoccupied by nightfall, defenders slipping back through hidden tunnels to fire on the Marines from behind. The terrain itself conspires against the attackers. Volcanic ash absorbs artillery bursts, and the jagged ground offers little cover for men or machines. Tanks bog down or are knocked out by mines and anti-tank guns, their burned hulls left as grim markers of the advance. Every day brings new assaults, each one planned with fresh barrages and careful coordination between infantry, armor, and engineers. Yet the pattern repeats. A brief surge forward, a hail of fire, then another roll call of missing men. The Marines adapt, sending small squads ahead to probe for weak spots, using flamethrowers and satchel charges to seal tunnel mouths and collapse bunkers. Still, the lines move only by inches, and every gain is paid for in blood. By the end of February, it is clear that the meatgrinder will not be taken by force of numbers alone. The battle for Hill 382 has become a test of endurance, a slow-motion struggle where the only certainty is the mounting toll on both sides. Nishi Ridge forms a jagged spine along Iwo Jima's western flank, its rocky crest overlooking the unfinished stretch of Airfield No. 3. For the 4th Marine Division, the assignment is clear. Take the ridge, clear the plateau, and cut off Japanese defenders still holding out in the north. But the ground ahead is anything but simple. Japanese engineers have transformed the ridge into a fortress, pillboxes carved into the reverse slope, mortar pits camouflaged by volcanic stone, and firing ports concealed behind sliding steel shutters. Every approach is covered, every hollow mapped for pre-sighted artillery. Assault teams move out at first light on March 2nd, pushing through a tangle of shell holes and jagged rock. Progress is measured in meters. The volcanic dust fouls rifle bolts and clings to uniforms, while machine gun fire sweeps the open ground between cover. Each time a squad claws forward, defenders disappear into tunnels, only to reappear behind or beside the advancing line. The Marines answer with demolitions and flamethrowers, working in tandem with Sherman tanks. At close range, the tanks' main guns blast cave mouths, while their hulls shield engineers racing to place satchel charges. By midday, the forward companies reach the lower slopes. Engineers, many just months out of training, crawl forward with Bangalore torpedoes and shaped charges. They clear mines, blow wire obstacles, and collapse tunnel mouths under a storm of covering fire. The cost is immediate. Casualties mount as snipers, and hidden gunners target every movement. But the work continues, hour after hour, as bulldozers carve narrow tracks up the slope, allowing tanks and supply jeeps to edge forward. The fight for Nishi Ridge lasts the better part of 3 days. On March 4th, after repeated assaults and with supporting fire from both land and sea, the Marines finally seize the crest. The battered remains of Japanese positions mark the ground. Collapsed pillboxes, burned-out machine guns, and the scattered gear of defenders who fought to the end. With the ridge cleared, the unfinished runway of Airfield No. 3 lies exposed, its surface cratered and littered with debris. The airfield itself, never completed by the Japanese, now serves as a landmark for the next phase of the battle. The drive into the northern plateau and the final pockets of resistance. Clearing Nishi Ridge and securing the airfield open the western flank, allowing American lines to link up across the island. For the 4th Division, the victory is hard-won and incomplete, every gain measured against the cost in men and machines. But with the ridge in Marine hands, the Japanese defenders in the north lose their last natural barrier, setting the stage for the final, grinding push across the island's upper reaches. Before dawn on March 4th, Major General Graves Erskine's 3rd Marine Division gathered in the darkness along the northern front. The old methods, artillery barrages, daylight charges, had bled the Marines for little ground. Now, Erskine ordered something new, a silent approach, no preparatory shelling, just men moving out beneath a sky still streaked with the last of the night's star shells. The target was Hill 362C, a key height anchoring the Japanese 2nd Defensive Belt. Its slopes were laced with caves and covered by interlocking fields of fire. For days, every assault had been thrown back with heavy losses. This time, infantry squads advanced in small groups, radio silence maintained, each man briefed on the exact route. Engineers led the way, crawling with Bangalore torpedoes and satchel charges, ready to collapse tunnel mouths and clear wire. The first sign of the attack came not from the American side, but from the Japanese defenders startled to find Marines already at the base of the hill. Caught without warning, some positions fell quickly. Others fought back with grenades and machine guns, but the element of surprise forced the defenders into confusion. By sunrise, Marines had reached the crest of 362C, sealing off entrances and calling in supporting tanks to blast stubborn strongpoints at point-blank range. Across the center of the island, similar tactics played out. Hill 362A and 362B, once thought untouchable behind walls of fire, were now threatened by coordinated pre-dawn thrusts. Small units worked methodically, using flamethrowers and demolitions to clear each pillbox before moving laterally along the ridgeline. The Japanese, deprived of their usual warning by the absence of artillery preparation, struggled to organize counterattacks in the confusion. Some defenders attempted to slip away through tunnels, only to be cut off as Marines sealed exits behind them. The capture of Hill 362C on March 4th marked a turning point. For the first time since landing, the Americans had taken a major objective without the cost of a frontal daylight assault. The new tactics, stealth, surprise, precise coordination, proved that adaptation could break the deadlock. By midday, the division's lines had advanced, and the island's central plateau was split. Isolated Japanese pockets now faced encirclement, their lines of communication severed. The Marines, exhausted but emboldened, pressed forward, knowing that each gain was the result of learning paid for in blood. Erskine's gamble had worked. The island's defenders, once able to predict every move, now faced an enemy willing to rewrite the rules with each new dawn. By March 11th, the northern plateau of Iwo Jima had become a maze of shattered stone and hidden fire. The last Japanese strongholds, now isolated and running low on supplies, clung to a network of caves and crevices the Marines called Cushman's Pocket. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cushman's 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, was assigned to clear this final knot of resistance, an assignment that meant crawling into darkness, fighting room by room, and sealing tunnels with satchel charges. Every advance was contested. Japanese defenders, many wounded or starving, waited in silence for the Americans to come close. When Marines approached, grenades rolled from unseen hands, bursts of fire echoed from blackened holes, and sometimes a single shot signaled the end of a last-ditch stand. The volcanic dust, already thick in the air, mixed with the smell of cordite and the sharp tang of explosives. Engineers led the way, setting charges to collapse tunnels while riflemen covered every entrance. Each explosion sent up a shower of rock and ash, sometimes followed by muffled shouts from within. The Marines fought their way through a labyrinth where every corner could hide a sniper, every shadow a counterattack. At times, Japanese soldiers emerged from the rubble, charging with bayonets or clutching explosives to their chests. These attacks were desperate, often ending before they began. But they forced the Americans to stay alert, nerves stretched thin after weeks of relentless combat. By the second week of March, Cushman's men had reduced the pocket to a few hundred yards of broken ground. The cost was heavy. Squads that started the day with a dozen men might finish with half that number. Company commanders moved from hole to hole, checking on their battered platoons, sending word back for more flamethrower fuel or demolition charges. Each night, the Marines dug in on ground they'd fought all day to hold, listening for movement in the darkness, knowing that the enemy was still close. As Cushman's pocket shrank, the Japanese fell back toward the last natural fortress on the island, Bloody Gorge. Here, Kuribayashi gathered the remnants of his command for a final stand. The fighting in the pocket had been brutal, but the Marines understood that the worst might still be ahead. The exhaustion showed in every face, every movement. Yet the work continued, methodical and unyielding, as one stronghold after another disappeared into silence. The end of the battle was near, but on this ground, every inch was earned. At 5 a.m. on March 26, 1945, the last organized Japanese force on Iwo Jima rose from the darkness and struck for Airfield No. 2. Nearly 300 men, many officers wielding swords, crept past American lines under cover of night. The targets were not frontline riflemen, but the men of the 36th Marine Depot Company, the 8th Ammunition Company, and airfield engineers, sailors, African-American Marines, and support troops who had spent weeks unloading ships, moving supplies, and clearing runways under fire. The attack tore into their bivouac, catching men as they slept. In the confusion, Depot Marines grabbed carbines and grenades, fighting from foxholes and supply dumps. The firefight raged for over 90 minutes, with Japanese troops slashing through tents and firing into machine gun positions. Private James Whitlock and Private First Class James Davis, both from the 36th Depot Company, stood their ground, returning fire until relief arrived. By sunrise, 53 Americans lay dead and 120 wounded. Among the Japanese attackers, over 200 bodies were found, many still clutching their swords. The final raid ended as abruptly as it began. By midday, organized resistance on Iwo Jima ceased. For the men who survived that last night, the cost was immediate and personal. Friends lost, wounds carried home, memories that would never fade. Yet the island's ledger was larger than any single skirmish. In 36 days, the Marine Corps suffered 6,821 killed and over 19,000 wounded. The Navy's toll, including Bismarck C's sinking, added another 2,800 casualties. Of the original Japanese garrison, nearly all were dead. Only 216 surrendered alive. In the months that followed, the airfields built on Iwo Jima filled with the thunder of inbound bombers. The first B-29, Dynamite, landed on March 4th, even before the island was declared secure. By war's end, landing logs recorded 2,251 B-29 arrivals, some limping in with engines shot out, others low on fuel, and many simply refueling before the last leg home. Historians have debated the true number of hives saved. Some landings were routine, others desperate. The Army Air Forces claimed up to 24,000 airmen owed their lives to Iwo Jima's runways. The real figure is lower, but for the crews who staggered out of battered bombers onto volcanic ash, the island's value was measured in breaths, not numbers. For the Depot Marines and the airfield crews, the battle's end was quieter. Just the sound of engines overhead and the steady work of clearing wrecks, patching runways, and burying the dead. Iwo Jima's cost was paid in lives and limbs, in days without sleep, and in the silent endurance of the men who held the line until the last shot was fired. The island became a waypoint for bombers and a grave for thousands. In the final tally, every landing, every name, every marker in the black sand became part of the ledger that defined the deadliest fight in Marine Corps history. In just 36 days, the Battle of Iwo Jima cost over 26,000 American casualties, including nearly 7,000 killed. and left only about 1,000 of the original 21,000 Japanese defenders alive. Documents show that Kuribayashi's fortress, 18 kilometers of tunnels, and 800 pillboxes inflicted the highest single battle toll in Marine Corps history. The capture of Iwo Jima enabled over 2,200 B-29 emergency landings and saved hundreds of aircrews, according to USAAF after-action reports. Yet many Japanese records from the final days, including Kuribayashi's last messages, remain missing or classified. Historians continue to debate whether the strategic cost matched the human price, but the island's airfields proved vital in the final months of the Pacific War. Today, Iwo Jima stands as a documented reminder of the brutal cost of island warfare and the lengths nations will go to control a patch of ground that alters the course of history.